Change Healthcare, CDK Global, Ivanti. What do all these cyberattacked companies have in common? They are all major players in the supply chains of hundreds, sometimes thousands of other companies, often supplying essential hardware or software that's crucial to daily business operations. Your company might follow all of the best cybersecurity practices, yet still be vulnerable to infections or data breaches through your supply chain. No one is completely safe. However, there are some steps you can take to protect your business, and we'll discuss those measures today. Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. I'm Michael Canetta. I'm the CEO and founder of Eternal Networks. And every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, or around there, a little bit late today, it's been a busy day, I go live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram to discuss the latest technology and cybersecurity news that might affect you and that might affect your business, and to also answer your questions. In these live streams, I cover educational topics to help fellow small business owners feel more confident about their knowledge of business technology and cybersecurity, and really the state of what's going on today. At Eternal Networks, our goal is to help businesses stop worrying about their IT and cybersecurity so they can focus on what they're passionate about, what they really love to do. We want to build safe and secure environments where they can focus on that. At the end of this live stream, I'll be answering questions from the audience. So if you do have any questions, get them ready. First off, in the news, there's been a massive AT&T data breach that has exposed the call logs of 109 million customers of AT&T. They confirmed just recently this data breach where threat actors stole the call logs for around 109 million customers from the Snowflake account that AT&T uses between April 14th and April 25th of this year. The stolen data includes telephone numbers, interaction counts, and aggregate call durations. But luckily, it does not contain sensitive personal information such as names or social security numbers. After disclosing the breach, AT&T worked with cybersecurity experts, notified law enforcement, and received permission from the Department of Justice to delay public notifications due to some national security concerns. AT&T is implementing some additional cybersecurity measures and promises to notify affected customers while cooperating with law enforcement to apprehend those that are responsible. Another data breach, this one affected Advanced Auto Parts. This one affects around 2.3 million people. And this is another data breach resulting from recent Snowflake data theft attacks. The breach confirmed on June 19th of this year affected current and former employees and job applicants. It exposed full names, social security numbers, driver's license information, government ID numbers, etc. The unauthorized access to Advance's Snowflake environment lasted from April 14th to May 24th, and impacted individuals are being offered 12 months of complimentary identity theft protection and credit monitoring services through Experian. They're also advised to remain vigilant for potential fraud. So if you used to work there or have applied to work there, just be wary and keep your eye out on your data for any potential identity theft and fraud. All right, now on to our topic of discussion for the day. Any cyber attack is dangerous. That goes without saying, but the particularly devastating ones are those on supply chain companies. These can be any supplier, digital or non-digital, of goods and services. We've seen several attacks on the supply chain occur this year that have had wide-reaching consequences. These are one-to-many attacks where victims can go far beyond the company that was initially breached. Think of it as they get into one company and through them get into all of their customers, right? So they get into one and have access to many other organizations' data. Some recent high-profile examples of supply chain attacks include the Change Healthcare attack. We've talked extensively about Change Healthcare. Change Healthcare is a software that is used by many healthcare organizations around the country. We've talked about it on past live streams. We've talked about it in our weekly cybersecurity briefings. United Healthcare has shared quite a bit of information related to it and the costs associated with it. And it has impacted providers. It's still impacting providers. I know of a local here in Reno, dermatologist that recently told me that they're still affected by it. They're still having some delayed payments related to that attack on Change Healthcare. United Healthcare said that it's cost them almost $900 million plus the $22 million ransom that they paid, and they're still dealing with it. There's also been, lawsuits filed and other things that they're going to be dealing with for the foreseeable future. Another one, CDK Global. We talked about that. That has affected car dealerships around the country. CDK Global is software that many of these car dealerships rely on for scheduling services, sales, all aspects really of their operations. And so if you had scheduled service at a car dealership that used CDK Global software, you weren't able to get service. They didn't know you were supposed to come in. They didn't know what services you needed. They weren't able to do anything. They were literally dead in the water as a result of this breach at CDK Global. Another one, we haven't talked about this one as much, but Ivanti has a widely used Connect Secure VPN that has seen some mass exploitation by threat actors following the January disclosure of 2 high-severity zero-day vulnerabilities in their systems. Researchers have said that thousands of Ivanti VPN devices were compromised during these attacks, with the list of victims including the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That's a mouthful. That's why normally we just call them CISA. Other victims include MITRE. They're a major provider of federally funded R&D, and they are also the one that provides the cybersecurity framework that's become ubiquitous in the security industry, the MITRE framework. You may have heard us mention MITRE in the past. Gartner has talked about the frequency and severity of these supply chain attacks, and that there's really a huge return on investment with these criminal organizations, right? If they get into a supply chain vendor, now it's exponentially larger than if they just breached one customer. As vulnerabilities such as the Log4j spread throughout the supply chain, more threats are expected to emerge moving forward. In fact, Gartner predicts that by 2025, 45% of organizations worldwide will have experienced attacks on their software supply chains, a threefold increase from 2021. Digital supply chain risks really demand new mitigation approaches that involve more deliberate risk-based vendor and partner segmentation and scoring, requests for evidence of security controls, and secure best practices. Also a shift in resilience-based thinking and efforts to get ahead of any forthcoming regulations. If you're not properly prepared, then you can be impacted by a breach of software you use or have a vital service or goods supplier go down for potentially days or weeks due to a cyber attack. As part of any good business continuity and disaster recovery strategy, you should look at supply chain risks in light of the current increase in attacks and formulate a plan. And you may say, well, how can we do that? Well, we're here to help guide you through that. I'm going to talk a little bit now about some steps that you can use to mitigate the risks and to build that plan. First of all, I say this frequently, you have to identify and assess your risks, right? We lead with that because you have to know what you have and where your risk is to be able to build that plan. List all of your vendors and suppliers, including those that provide goods, services, and digital products. Evaluate the cybersecurity risks associated with each of those vendors and review the vendor's security. If they haven't published on their website, you can request information. You can distribute surveys to them to gather information on the cybersecurity measures that they take. It's also important that you then build some sort of a risk framework around that, right? So after you identify each of those vendors and determine, hey, these are the ones that we utilize, rank them in order of detriment to your organization, right? If one of them you use every day, all day long, like car dealerships and CDK Global, right? Put that one at the top of the list and focus on that one first. If there's another one that, if they were offline for a week, you'd probably be okay, put them at the bottom of the list, and everybody else kind of according to that need throughout that list. Then it's also important that you establish some security benchmarks for your organization. Determine what the minimum security requirements you're going to require for your vendors. I would highly recommend that in doing that, you use existing data privacy standards, such as GDPR compliance if you deal with any organizations or individuals in the European Union. There's also lots of other security frameworks, CIS, other things, right? use those standards as benchmarks to ensure vendors meet the necessary security protocols. Ask them specific questions, right? To make sure that they're aligning with what you determine is the best for your organization. If you say internally, we're going to require MFA on everything, and you want your vendors doing the same, ask them, hey, do you require MFA on all your logins? And ask them to, confirm that. Also, it's important that you enhance your own cybersecurity. Don't just rely on your third-party vendors through your supply chain to manage things on their own. Make sure you're doing your job on your end. Implement a regular patch application strategy to address any software vulnerabilities promptly. In the case of that Ivanti thing, right? Ivanti said, hey, there's this thing. The world knew about it. It was announced, and Ivanti fairly quickly came out with an update for it. Organizations that had a regular patch application strategy and patched that quickly protected themselves against potential future attacks. So make sure you have a strategy around that, a documented strategy that you follow. Also, conduct annual IT security assessments to identify and address your potential vulnerabilities in your systems. I will say this, an annual IT security assessment is the minimum, right? Part of your strategy and your plan should be how frequently do you need to do that? Because if you're only looking at vulnerabilities in your system once a year, guess what? Everything changes in technology. There's new vulnerabilities that are notified about almost daily. Microsoft vulnerabilities, Adobe vulnerabilities, different applications. And so it's important that you look at some of those things more than once a year, but make sure you're looking at everything and conducting a thorough risk assessment at least once a year. Also, this one, there's pros and cons to both sides of this, but it's important that you diversify your supply chain. Don't rely on one vendor for everything. We do that in security, right? We don't want one vendor providing all layers of security, because what happens if that one vendor goes down? Guess what? Everything's down. So don't rely on a single supplier for critical components or services. Diversify that. Now, there's such a thing as diversifying too much and overcomplicating systems. And so you have to take that into consideration based on the needs of your organization and determine how many different suppliers of those critical components and services that you're going to need. And then establish backup suppliers to reduce the risk of operational downtime if a key vendor is compromised. If you always buy a particular product that's critical to your operations from one vendor and they go down, have somebody else in mind. Even if it's more expensive, that additional expense might be better than waiting and being down for that week or two or three that vendor needs to get back online. Also, it's important to consider having a backup internet service provider to maintain connectivity during outages. You know, if you're relying on Cox as an example for your internet services, or Comcast, or there's countless others we can name, and they have an outage from an attack, now you're completely down. So evaluate having backup internet service provider to minimize that, right? Two different providers so that they're not taking your office completely offline. And then it's also important that you have regular data backups for your cloud services, for any service, even if it's a third-party service. Microsoft and Google both in their end-user license agreements say, we do not back up your data. We have no guarantees that your data, can be restored from backup, et cetera. They have some redundancy in place, but they say in there, we recommend you back up your data. So make sure you have a data backup plan for your critical data. And I wouldn't necessarily rely on that vendor, your supply chain vendor, to provide that backup. Make sure if they are providing that backup, that they're providing it in a way that's secure against data loss. Also, it's important that in all of these things that you follow best practices and recommendations from your vendors. I mentioned Microsoft's, service agreement, right? Their end user license agreement. They specifically list regular data backups. And so follow their recommendation, make sure you're backing up their data. Because if something does happen and Microsoft's taken offline, they're not going to be able to get you access to your data. You're going to need those backups. Also, if you have any questions about this, I say this every week, but if you ever have any questions on any of this with cybersecurity, supply chain attacks, or just any cybersecurity or tech in general, please reach out to me. Send me a message. I love having conversations with people. I had somebody reach out to me that I haven't talked to in years, and she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got a question about VPNs," and it was great. It was great to have a conversation with her, talk with her about VPN solutions as she's preparing to travel. I love that. So please, there's no question too big or too small. Send me a direct message. Go to our website. Leave comments in our posts, in our chats. Like I said, I love talking tech. All my team loves talking tech and security. I'd love to answer any of your questions. All right. If you're eager to stay on top of cybersecurity challenges such as the one we talked about today, I've got an opportunity for you. Every Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have a free weekly cybersecurity briefing where you can connect with us and other local businesses to discuss the latest technology and cybersecurity issues that might impact your specific industry, your specific community. We customize each session to the specific industries of those that attend. We had an IT director from a small regional hospital in rural Nevada that joined us yesterday. And we were able to have some in-depth conversation with him about what type of things hospitals are facing, what we're seeing, and some tips and tricks on how they can best protect themselves. We were able to provide some targeted insights into the healthcare industry for this organization to meet their needs with their cybersecurity. So stay informed, stay empowered. Check out the available dates via the link below, or you can scan the QR code on the screen to secure your spot today. Let's see if we have any questions from our audience. Wasn't really following along with that on my other screen here, so let me pull it up and see if there's anything from our community. Of course, it's not loading. Emily, was there anyone that posted a comment or a question that I can answer?
Doesn't look like it today.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Emily. Emily is the woman behind the curtain that helps with all the magic and the QR codes and the links and everything else. We appreciate her and everything that she does to make these live streams happen. Thanks for joining us today. If you do have any questions or comments, like I said, you can always contact me via direct message, call our office, email us. All of our information is on our website, itnet.works, or through all of our social media platforms where you're watching this live stream. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.